Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be creating a set of 3 cards plus envelopes using some easy foiling techniques with Altenew Spring Garden Collection release products. We're going to be using hot foil plates, stencils, and creating these beautiful designs. I'm also going to incorporate some previously released products from Altenew, some stencils from Simon Says Stamp, as well as my favorite Pawsitively saturated inks from Simon Says Stamp. Let's start with some foiling. We're going to use this Morning Blooms hot foil plate first. I've already prepped my Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil system. I've placed the foil plate on the platform, the foil with the dull side up. The dull side is what's going to foil, some hammer mill press smooth cardstock, and then I've heated up the machine. Once it is all the way heated, I'm going to run it through my Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine. We'll remove our plates, remove our foil, and we will be left with this beautiful Morning Blooms image. This is a big, bold image. Don't worry about any of the overfoiling there. We can easily remove that with an eraser if we need to in a little bit. Now I am starting with a half a sheet of cardstock for my designs. This is on purpose so that I can trim them down with a rectangle die later. I'm going to take the Morning Blooms hot foil plate again, and this time I'm going to cut a small piece of gold foil, and I'm using a Simon Says Stamp white envelope, and we're going to foil the envelope. I need to be a little bit more tricky with the design here. I need to figure out exactly where it's going to go. I kind of dropped everything because I want to make sure I leave room for the sentiment, but I want to create a coordinating set. If you have been watching some of my most recent videos, I've been talking a lot about trying to be more intentional about either stamping inside the cards. I did not do that today, and I'll talk more about that here in a little bit when we get to the sentiments. And also creating coordinating envelopes, because I think the finished result is just beautiful. So we're going to heat this, foil it, and run it through. You have to just be a little bit more, like I said, careful or intentional with where you place your die or your hot foil plate, pardon, so that it leaves a nice area for any type of address. When I peel this away, I'm super happy with this. There is a bit of overfoiling, and I'll show you how I take a sand eraser and remove any of that excess overfoil. Now it's beautiful as is, but there is a coordinating set of Morning Blooms stencils, and I think we're going to go ahead and stencil that envelope to match our card perfectly. We're doing all of our foiling here first, and then we'll move on to some stenciling and inking and putting it all together. Very assembly line style. Even though all 3 cards are different, they are all going to feature the same sentiment. Next, we have the vibrant florals. Now this is a big, bold floral hot foil plate. It's going to take up the entire front of your card base if you position it the way I did. Again, I'm using a half sheet of cardstock. You could totally, when you maybe take a rectangular die or other shaped die after you foiled it, you could shift that one way or another and have like a lot more of the floral image hanging off the edge. I chose to keep mine more centered, but there's lots of ways to use that. So beautiful, you guys. Again, I'm going to take a white envelope and we're going to foil these vibrant florals off of the edge so that our envelope matches our card perfectly. This was very, very easy to achieve. Coloring images with stencils definitely makes this a much quicker and easier project. The entire project probably only took me 2.5 hours. And again, there's a bit of overfoil, so I'm going to take my eraser and remove that. I think the foiled envelope is beautiful as is, and I would make more of an elegant design, I suppose I want to say, if you leave it without adding any color with some inks. But again, we're going to stencil this with the same ink colors because there is coordinating stencils for the Vibrant Florals hot foil plate. I love that. All right, we're going to set all of that aside, and finally we are going to foil the chevron background. I love a fantastic basic like this. We're going to take some rainbow foil. I'm going to foil it on a half sheet of cardstock, and we are going to foil the design. I actually foiled it with some magenta foil first, which I think is what I'm doing right now. But I ended up not using that. So I have some leftover foil backgrounds I can use later on, and you're going to see how I even get more foiled backgrounds. I'm not using them all in the video today, but when I have the products out, I do like to try to use everything, or at least make usable pieces that can be used or in the creation of cards later on. So here's that rainbow background. So pretty. This is the mini rainbow foil. Now I am taking the PinkFresh Studio solid hot foil plate and placing it here, and I'm going to take my leftover foil piece, and we are going to foil another half sheet of cardstock with this leftover, and this is going to give us a more solid rainbow background. This will be great for cards later on. I have little bins of all kinds of leftover foil pieces from PinkFresh Studio and Waffle Flower, and now from Altenew that I need to do something with. Every once in a while I dig into those bins because I can pull little parts and pieces to use for other cards. So we're just going to foil any leftover pieces. I also have the magenta foil, so I foiled that as well. I want to give you a look at how all of those look. And then, of course, we have our other backgrounds. I did use some Mama Elephant B2B rectangle dies to die cut all of these into rectangular shapes. You can use a paper trimmer if you would prefer. I like the rectangle because I can see exactly the area that I'm going to die cut. And so that is how I got all of these trimmed down. Next, we are going to take the Morning Blooms set, and we are going to start stenciling. I'm using a little Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink in Lemonade and Citrine for the daffodil. I decided to do all different colors for the Morning Blooms image, so it's super colorful. While I am inking up each section, I'm also going to ink up the coordinating envelope. I only made the coordinating envelopes for the first 2 cards today. I'm going to have to think of something else to do for the chevron design, since I used only dies and hot foil and a solid hot foil plate, I guess, all over design hot foil plate, I guess I should say, for that one. So I didn't really have anything to naturally make it coordinate. And that's why I didn't create an envelope for that 3rd card. So we're just going to switch back and forth between the envelope and the card and color in this image. Again, this is Lemonade and Citrine. And we'll pull in a little bit of the sherbet color when we get to the center of our daffodil. As these inks dry and are absorbed into the cardstock, they are going to smooth out and lighten just a little bit. I'm using the smaller size Simon Says Stamp blending brushes to do all of my blending here. The Tonic Studios magnetic platform I'm using is something I've been using for the last few weeks, and I'm really enjoying. The magnets hold the stencils in place while you're working, which is so super helpful. Here's the sherbet color. I'm only going to touch a little bit there, and then I went back over with the yellow. This will dull a bit, which I'm glad of, a little bit later on, so it won't be quite so stark. Let's go ahead and do our second one, Citrine and then sherbet. Lots of switching back and forth between colors, but I love the finished result of this card and envelope. Now, before I take the stencil and move on to the next section, you will notice with these Altenew Morning Blooms stencil that the base for the flowers are all on stencil number 1. And because of that, I don't want to accidentally transfer ink from, let's say, the daffodil to the next area when I move that stencil around. I'm taking a microfiber cloth and just wiping it clean in between each section change. And then later, I did wash my stencils with a little warm water and soap. To get into some of the small areas, I'm also using the waffle flower shading brushes. These tiny flowers here are inked with Carnation and Peony. The little shading brushes help to only keep that dark color right in the center. Even the small blending brushes would not give that good of results since they're bigger than these flower areas. I can't say enough great things about some shader brushes. They really do make stenciling into small areas so handy. The foiling areas resist the ink, so you're left with a beautiful gold foiled outline. Again, I've cleaned or wiped my stencil off, and we're going to move on to the little purple flowers. For this, we're using bubble gum and sweets. And I think there's just a little bit on the envelope. Part of these are hanging off the edge. So we'll add just a little bit here. And that is the last image on the first stencil. Next, we're going to move on to stencil number 2. On this stencil, we have our final flower as well as our leaves. For this large flower, I decided to go with shades of blue. We're going to use Surf and Royal, and you'll notice that you ink up the different sections or petals, I guess, of the flower separately. So I am going and adding Surf and Royal to each of these sections so that the Royal is kind of near the center of the flower and it lightens on each flower petal. We're just going to keep moving this until we get the entire thing inked. This flower here has the least amount on the coordinating envelope. And then we have one little petal left. Let's go ahead and ink up our envelope. And we'll get this last petal, and then we can move on to the leaves. What I love about stencils is you can always line them back up and add more color as needed. For the leaves, I'm going to be using some Spring and Lucky inks. So kind of a bright, springy type of greenery. The stencils line up so easily and are super self-explanatory. I know I've heard from a ton of you that you really love coordinating stencils for stamp sets or foil plates or whatever the case may be because it eliminates the need to color and you get amazing results. This is also a great way to make a lot of cards quickly and easily. Look at that envelope, isn't it pretty? Once we have the card all finished, I think you're going to love the coordinating set. We'll add a little bit more Spring and Lucky colors to the leaves here on the design. And then I'm going to show you how to dress up this panel. As beautiful as the design is, I want to really draw the eye into the floral design, but I don't want to add a ton of extra stuff to this card. This is a beautiful panel and would look great with maybe just a sentiment stamped on it. But I'm going to take some A2 masks and a little very, very light surf ink, and we're going to carefully apply that ink just around the edge to give kind of that vignette or highlight look to the design. So lightly around the perimeter, I'm going to ink up with surf, trying to avoid where I've already inked. I also don't want to get blue ink over the yellow, so you'll notice I'm pretty careful around that edge. I'm going to kind of work up and around it, very, very light. We're not going to bring the ink all the way into the center, more just around the perimeter of the design. When I pull away the masking stencil, we are left with a beautiful background that almost looks matted. We're going to go ahead and set that aside, and let's stencil our next card. This is going to be the Vibrant Floral. Again, it lines up so easily. It's a two-part stencil. This time we're going to be using bubblegum, sweets, and taffy with a little royal over top. We'll also be using the same Spring and Lucky colors for the greenery. I've really been loving purple shades and have been using a lot of them. I think it's because it's finally spring and I'm loving all of the color outside, and so I've really been drawn to using a lot of color on my cards. On each layer, I'm putting bubblegum, or inking is what I want to say, bubblegum first, and then some sweets. Then for the second part, oh, this is a three-part stencil. I'm so sorry. We're going to do the same thing because I want all of my petals to be the same. You could alternate them if you wanted to, and maybe do light, dark, light, dark. I think that would be kind of cool too. And then just taking a little sweets down near the base. All about adding that color and building the beautiful depth and dimension. And then we're going to place the flower center. I was trying to figure out which one this is. It's actually the one over on the right. Ignore me being silly. There's stencil 3, and once I lay that out, I can see exactly what I need to do. So this goes here. We're going to use taffy ink, and then we're going to do a little royal ink over that. I actually didn't add any additional ink to my royal blending brush. I just used whatever leftover ink was on my brush to deepen and darken that center just a bit. Then we're going to do the same thing for the other two flowers. Leaving the same third stencil in place, we're going to take Spring and Lucky inks and ink up all of our greenery. I do want to avoid any of that bright magenta ink because I don't want to pick that up and accidentally blend it into the leaves. Luckily, this stencil is big enough I didn't need to wipe it off first. Then we'll take some Lucky ink to deepen and darken some of those areas. Once we have that done, I need to get my royal ink blending brush. So I pulled the stencil off first, and I just felt like the flower centers needed a little something more. So here's where I'm going to line it back up and take my blue blending brush and go right over those centers. And I like that. See how it deepens and darkens it just a little bit? You can really see the difference between those and the one on the right. It doesn't completely change the color, but it does deepen it a little bit. Let's go ahead and take our stencils and ink blend the coordinating envelope. Doing the same thing as before with a layer of bubblegum, some sweets, then a little bit of taffy and royal in the center, and Spring and Lucky inks for the leaves. This gives you a perfectly coordinated envelope. And again, you guys, I'm so excited about these. I think they are Super, super pretty. It makes me want to foil and stencil all my envelopes. In another video recently, I mentioned that I had made out some cards, and my favorite envelopes to address were the ones that I had decorated. And so it really reignited the interest in making sure that I am creating some coordinating envelopes. If not all of the time, a good percentage of the time, because I really, really love the finished result. I love mailing out cards that have a coordinating envelope. I would love to know in the comments if you have made coordinating envelopes or if you make coordinating envelopes for your cards. Let me know. Let me know if you want to see more of that in the future. I always love hearing from you guys. Let's pull the stencil off here and then I will show you that. I'm so sorry that I'm a little bit low when stenciling this. Hopefully though, you know that I stenciled it just like I did the card. Now I want to do the same thing that I did for the previous background, but this time I decided to just take a little bit of the sweets or bubblegum ink, whatever was really left on my ink blending brush, and I'm going to use my A2 mask stencil and go around the edge, and just anywhere along the edge that's white, I'm going to add a little bit of color. In fact, I can see where I missed an area, and that instantly frames up our background. Super, super simple. Now for my two stenciled cards, I am going to add a little water to some white gouache and pick it up with a paintbrush, and I am splattering both of these backgrounds with some white gouache, and I'm going to let this completely dry. It does dry really quick. I was pretty generous with it, and I like that little extra bit of distressing on the backgrounds. I'm not going to do this on the envelopes, just on the cards. I like to do any of my splatter in a plastic box because it makes it so that when your box gets too messy, you can go wash it out and reuse it over and over. Next, I have die cut a bunch of the itty bitty branches from the new release. These are all just fantastic standalone dies. I die cut all of them from white cardstock, and we're going to have a little fun with adding color with our favorite inks. So I'm going to use a lot of the same colors that I just used so that the card definitely goes in this set. Starting with our Spring and Lucky colors for the big leafy branches. For the skinnier leafy branches, we are going to use a different green color combination so we have a little variety in our bouquet. I did put some grid paper, this is a tear-off paper pad from Simon Says Stamp, underneath where I'm working to protect my work surface, and it makes it easy to throw it away when I'm all finished. And now we're going to go in with Lucky and add our shading. I am a huge fan of standalone dies like this that can be used for lots or used in lots of different ways. These are so beautiful. I could see using these with lots of your Craft a Flower dies from Altenew to add even more beauty to those florals or floral arrangement cards. So there's our first group of leaves. Now for some of these floral branches that have little mini flowers, I'm going to use my shader brushes to add color. So we're going to add some citrine color to the flowers on this one, and then I am using the same Spring and Lucky colors for the stem and the leaves for these branches, but I'm using the larger bullet kind of tip shader brushes, and I'm just pouncing that color on the flowers so it gives me more control. That's sweets. I'm not blending any two colors on the flower part. We're just going to do a single color, and then we'll use a pretty pearl gemstone in the center of our flowers. So our first group of flowers is kind of the pinky purple, that's sweets. I kind of forgot to finish doing my yellow. This is the citrine. And let's move some inks out of the way. And for our final branch, we're going to do some blues with some seafoam color. And again, just pouncing that on with that bullet tip of the waffle flower shading brushes, and then going in with our mini blending brush and adding our color to the rest of the design. And that rainbow background is so pretty, the rainbow chevron. I've got two little skinny leafy branches left. This time we are going to use Sprout and Fairway inks so that it's a little bit different color of branch. We'll go in with Sprout first, and I'm being really gentle with all of these die cuts. And then a little Fairway. And there is our color for our dies. We're going to arrange these in our chevron shape. Let's move this out of the way to build our floral arrangement. I kind of like to lay everything out first, and then once I have a good idea of where it's all going to go, I can glue it down. And I will be using some liquid glue to create my floral arrangement. I think this is going to be so pretty against that rainbow background. The chevron hot foil plate adds just the perfect little amount of interest in a background like this, so that it isn't like a stark solid color. Next, I am going to stamp some sentiments on scraps of white cardstock from the Morning Flowers stamp set. I am stamping "You Are in My Heart." Now you might notice up in the top part of the screen, I stamped this first on one of the cards, but I don't like how far apart the word "you" and "are" are. I think it's too far. So I actually ended up stamping my sentiment 3 times on white cardstock. We'll die cut it with some sentiment labels dies from Simon Says Stamp, and then pop them up on each card background. I decided to make these kind of thinking of you, sympathy type of card designs. And this is the reason I chose not to stamp the insides of the cards today. That way I can really change it up when I need the card, and I can go to my stash and find an inside card greeting to customize it for the occasion. I don't have to create the card from the ground up, but yet it does give me a little flexibility in maybe it just needs to be a get well soon. Maybe it needs to be a sympathy. Maybe it just needs to be more of a I'm thinking of you kind of card, whatever the case may be. But that definitely changes the sentiment that I would use on the inside. "You Are in My Heart" is pretty generic, and so I feel like it can be used for a lot of occasions. Now, my Vibrant Flowers and Morning Florals, and Morning Blooms were both die cut with a Mama Elephant B2B rectangle that is A2 size, so that panel is going to completely cover the front of an A2 size card base. I'm using the new T-square ruler from Simon Says Stamp to help me line up my sentiment right where I want it to go on my card. For the Vibrant Florals, I placed it right in the center, and I'm going to add a little embellishment to the center of my flowers with these beautiful light orchid pretty pink posh pearls. I'm going to add little dabs of glue to my flower centers. I'm going to pick them up with an embellishment wand and pop them in place. I love these little triangle trays from Simon Says Stamp. They make it so easy to contain all the little embellishments and things and find just what I'm looking for. The pearls add a great little finishing touch, and of course you guys know that I have to add a heart somewhere on my card. So even though I thought I was done, I am going to go ahead and grab these little lilac heart embellishments and add them to my card design. And that will finish off this first set. Let's go ahead and decorate our next card. For the morning blooms, we're going to do the same thing, except I need to make sure that my sentiment completely hides the sentiment on my card that I didn't stamp correctly. This is a great way to hide a mistake on your design. I loved being able to leave this in the video so you can see how you can maybe fix something that doesn't turn out perfectly. Again, I'm using that T-square ruler to help me line up my sentiment, and then I'm going to add some glue to the center of some of the florals and use some fun Pretty Pink Posh pearls right in the center. I think we're going to use some of these little green color. I can't remember exactly what that's called. And then some creamsicle. We're also going to use some Trinity Stamps Hint of Mint hearts to embellish around our sentiment. The embellishments are only going on the card. I'm not going to be adding them to the envelope. You don't want to add anything like this to the envelope unless you were going to hand deliver it. If it's going to go through the mail, you definitely don't want to add any embellishment. I love these little Hint of Mint because I really feel like they go with everything. I'm trying to find just the right heart size. I was seeing if I had any small ones. I had to go grab my other container. I have 2 little containers of this color. So I'm looking for all my little mini ones, and I don't think I have any mini size left. So we're going to actually go with the big guy and then like the 2 of the medium size. I love how some of them are frosted and some are clear. Then, of course, we want to put this panel on an A2 size card base. And that will finish up this beautiful morning blooms design. Finally, let's go ahead and glue down all of our itty bitty branches. So really kind of going one at a time, I'm going to pick each of these up and place it with a little liquid adhesive. We're going to hide basically the base of this underneath our sentiment strip. Adding pearls to the center of the flowers helps really define the little florals, the little bitty florals, so much. And I love all these big green leafy branches, especially down near the base. I love lots of greenery in like floral arrangements, and so this works fantastic. And then this nice bright pop of pink, a little yellow. And I kind of want to tuck this one, so let's see if we can lift that up a little bit, just like that. Perfect. I'll put some foam adhesive back behind my sentiment and then pop it in place. Now I will tell you I accidentally adhered it too high to begin with, and so I had to very carefully peel it up and pull it down a little bit. I just felt like it was a little too high. I also don't think my sentiment strip die cut that great, so I'm going to try to fix that with my scissors. Now this background is slightly smaller than A2 size, so it's going to leave us with a nice white border all the way around. This is some new double-sided, super strong adhesive from Altenew that I'm using to attach my card panel to my card base. It is absolutely amazing, you guys. It is so super strong. I love that because I don't have to worry about my panel peeling up at all. And here's a look at all of my finished cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these easy foiled cards with matching foiled and stenciled envelopes using brand new products from the Altenew Spring Florals collection. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description below. I would love to see you over there in our community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to click the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.